Council work session for February 4th, 2019 is now in order. Roll call, please, Sue. Are we all here?
Sorry, the system didn't start.
Oh. You need me to back it up?
No.
Okay.
This is the roll call for February 4th, 2019 work session. Councilor Findley? Here. Mayor Rogers?
Here.
Councilor Curtis Gemeroy?
Here.
Councilor Yarnell Holloman?
Here.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
And Councilor Bacon and Councilor Corey have excused absences.
Well. All right, next, review of the council agenda and meeting. Do we, anything that you want off of the consent agenda, folks? Anything you'd like to know more about? Hearing none. All right, let's move along. Council business items. If we could start first with the committee assignments. I'm going to spring this all on you. You've seen it, and I'll come right clean with it. Anybody want to get off a committee for, in order for Elizabeth and or Stephanie to pick one up? Patrick?
I'd be more than willing to
Yes, sir.
I'd be more than willing to allow one of our newer counselors to be on the visioning committee if they wanted to do that.
Okay. Anybody, do we have a taker for visioning? Visioning,
I would be happy to take that.
okay. Sounds good to me. Then now, do we need this then to be nominated at some point in a later date, or can we do it this way? Tonight? Okay. Stephanie to visioning. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I just didn't see on there the TLT committee that I was recently put on.
I think the TLT committee is coming to an end, I believe.
It's over.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay.
Okay, so that
So-
one's off. What about the Cultural District Executive Board? Do you want to stay on that? Okay, we've got head shaking going on.
I would be happy to do that. I don't want to take it from you, but if you feel like you need some relief from all your things,
I
I'm
haven't really done anything yet, but you can totally take that if you want.
And we got Stephanie again for the Cultural District. Very good. I see here we have Newberg, right, which I actually served on for a number of years and never met, actually. So anybody want that one? That's very easy. You can get credit for doing nothing, actually. It's great. I've also, yeah, no takers, okay.
Mayor Rogers,
Yes.
just to let you know, I've been talking with Carrie Hinton at the Yamhill County.
Yep.
And they don't currently have anyone appointed to NUMAC either. It has not met in over a decade.
Over a
So there isn't
decade.
any rush.
Oh, well,
to
we
get
can
someone
certainly
appointed.
table that one for the next decade. You got that. Patrick's got it. All right. I also see here we've got something called the Yamhill County Water Task Force that Councilor McKinney had been on. Does anyone know what that might be? Yep.
It's a task force on water.
Thanks, Sue.
So, I think on some of your updates in the last one, you saw that the county and particularly Commissioner Sterrett is really interested in the conversations about a couple things. One is basically a water line that runs between Newberg and McMinnville.
Okay.
Emergency and that. The other conversation includes some bigger ones, including I think he's told us all before that McMinnville has tremendous water resources and their rates are low. And they have watershed, and they would like to talk about just sometime in the future, maybe a water authority. What would that mean? It can mean a lot of things, but basically it could be consolidation, just like there's a TVF&R for fire. There's a similar, a lot of us are experienced with clean water services. So that's part, it's actually, it's a real active group right now in discussions. And with Dundee right now, what we're telling them is that even though you don't need our water system, we'd like to get an emergency tie to them.
Patrick, are you ringing? Oh.
I was accidentally ringing.
Yes.
It was an accident.
Oh.
But I know I do want to
thought you were
talk.
signing up.
I do want to talk, but I wasn't trying to ring it while he was speaking.
Okay.
No, I would love to sign up for the water task force if that's possible.
Yep, sounds good to me. Do we need somebody for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Commission? Doug?
Doug Rux. No, we don't need, we have a full 5-member, but we do have 3 slots that are open for non-voting members based upon the adopted resolution. So
Okay.
if there's a council member who wants to be a non-voting member, they can do that.
Any, daytime, 1:30 to 2:30 during the day. No for Patrick. Anybody? Elise?
I would do that one.
Elise, okay. All right, and then what about Newberg 2030, Doug? When, are we gonna need people for that?
That's another one where we have a full committee, but we do not, at this point in time, have a council liaison
Okay.
representative for that. We don't have we're revising the whole meeting schedule.
Okay,
When does that one meet?
Pardon?
When does that one meet?
Typically, we meet in the afternoons.
yeah?
I can do that one, yeah.
Okay, all right, and Elizabeth, okay. Did you get those, Sue?
I didn't get the last one, I'm sorry.
Okay, Elizabeth to Newberg 2030.
Newberg 2030.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else, anything else? The other thing, just to mention, I think Denise said she's on Noon Rotary, Joe's with Kiwanis. What about early birds? Do we have any early birds? I see some early birds in the house, but anybody? Okay, so that's one to think about. Are there any others that I missed on here on this list of stuff you all are doing? No? Okay, cool. All right. All right, I think that's it for the moment until we get an early bird. So, okay. Next, all right. Anything else on that? Committee assignments? All right, moving along. How's about on February 19th, 2 weeks from today, we're going to try to do council priorities. The thought is to start with what we've got, the 13, and then go from there, get updates from staff, et cetera. Can we try to do it earlier than 6 o'clock? Yeah? Can we start at, I'll throw out 5. Can we start at 5? Yes? Yes? Is that okay? Joe? Yeah? Okay. So we'll do that. We'll start at 5 o'clock on the 19th for council priorities. All right. Anything else with council business? No? All right. Moving along. Transient lodging tax workshop. Cue Doug.
Thank you. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So, sorry this wasn't out in your packet. I actually put it together over the weekend. The mayor and I had a discussion about having a work session just for many of you to kind of get you up to speed of what's happened over the course of the last 3 years and then bring you kind of current where we're at, given the discussions you've had in December and in January, and then we'll talk about next steps moving forward. So, in a land far, far away, in a time long, long ago, the city adopted a transient room tax, which then became the transient lodging tax. So when we were putting together the economic development strategy back in 2015, one of the things that was identified was tourism and hospitality as one of the pillars of those 4 pillars of that economic development strategy. So with that, there were conversations with the council. The city manager pro tem at the time, Steve Rhodes, put together an advisory group to the city manager. And through that process, that advisory group and staff ended up going out for solicitation, did interviews, and hired Outlook to prepare a tourism strategy for the city. That strategy was ultimately approved back in June of 2016 by City Council by resolution number 3307. There were 3 focus areas to that tourism strategy. One was organizational development, destination development, and then destination marketing. So that set the stage for a series of conversations in the fall of 2016 with council, where we brought forward initially 3 potential models. Those models were hire an outside organization, engage the chamber in a tourism beyond what they were doing under their current contract, or hire city staff. Through those discussions, a 4th one came up, and that was use existing city staff. Council held those discussions. They came back in October, and they chose to use the existing city staff model. When they were looking at that point in time, the outside organization, the chamber, and the hiring a city staff was the most expensive proposition. The second probably was an outside organization, and then the chamber, kind of in that order. Council, subsequently, when they made their decision in October of 2016, they came back in December of 2016, and they appointed the Transient Lodging Tax Ad Hoc Committee. So that set the stage for activities that have taken place over the course of the last year, 2 years. So the TLT actually held their first meeting in January of 2017. In the material that was presented to council, there was a list of things that the TLT committee would do. So first of all, it said that they would operate no less than 2 years and no more than 4 years. It would be 13 members, and there are 13 members that got appointed to that, met the broad representation in the subsets that are listed in the slides there. So we did have somebody from the Airbnb and VRBO, so that was Megan Carta, city council member, an at-large citizen, ex officio members were the mayor and the city manager. And staff came out of the community development department, and that was myself. Their role was to solicit tourism, related facility projects, and review proposals and recommendations to the city council. So the council ultimately had the decision-making authority, and this was in regards to grants. So you may remember, some of you, we had a small grant program that was up to $20,000 a year, and then we had a destination development / marketing program. So the charge for the TLT was to review those grants, and they did, and then make recommendations to the city council, and the city council would then make the decision on the award of funds. They also had the charge over the last 2 years to continue that discussion about a permanent organizational structure for tourism. We also had conversations with the Chehalis Valley Chamber of Commerce on services for FAMs and marketing and destination in their contract for the visitor center. They did already have some marketing responsibilities as part of that contract. And then the last one on this slide was allocate funds to do an assessment on marketing material. And the TLT committee, through their discussions, selected that they identified they had enough brain power that was sitting around the table that they could take this task on and not hire an outside consultant to assist with that. So that's what the top bullet indicates. The grant programs, I'll get into that in a little more detail, and they continue again to talk about the organizational structure, a permanent organizational structure. So in the grants, and I put this material in because the question constantly comes up, what have we done in the past? So in 16-17, we did small grants for the Camellia Society for $20,000, the Cultural Center for the Camellia Festival for $65.50, Hoover Minthorn for $1,400 for some signs, Old Fashioned Festival, that was actually for marketing for the festival, $3,500, and YCAP for their fire benefit. What was not approved at that time was Tunes on Tuesday was looking for a $10,000 grant, and that was focused on fencing for the event. In 2017-18, the committee reviewed and made recommendations to the council. The council ended up awarding the Hoover Boyhood program at the Cultural Center for $2,500, Anvil Academy for their Grand Prix of $25,000, Truffle Festival for $7,000, and the Cultural Center for the Camellia Festival for $8,000. Important to note here, Anvil Academy did not exercise their grant. The program came and went It was aligned with the Old Fashioned Festival, and that's come and gone. We're waiting for an email to say, yes, we're not going to take the grant because their program's already come and gone. What was not approved, Anvil had a second proposal for some promotion at the Portland IndyCar race for $10,000. In the large grant, which we called the Destination Development Marketing Grant, the committee reviewed and recommended the Downtown Wineries Association for $20,000. That was for some media work, and that's in process. The Cultural Center for the Culinary Enrichment Center, that's the culinary kitchen component of $250,000. They have a grant contract. We're trying to work through the dates to put in that contract. And then Wolves and Peoples for the Steins to Vines Trail for $30,000. That one, we do not have a contract generated yet. They need to go back to Yamhill County because they've got a land use process that they have to go through to connect two properties by that trail. So that's the grants that were approved. Not approved was Hoover Minthorn House. They were looking for some roof, gutters, and electrical for $30,000. Parks and Rec was looking for lighting up the sports complex at Darnell Wright, and the city for the cultural district wayfinding of $73,500. So the ask was larger than the funds were available at that time. So in August of this year, City Council and the TLT held a work session on the organizational structure. And what was presented is have an outside organization called Visit Newberg. On December 17th, staff brought forward, based upon discussions with the TLT committee, an agreement between the city, a draft agreement between the city and Visit Newberg, a recommendation on initial board of directors for Visit Newberg, and Councilor Yarnell Holloman was identified as the council member to be on the Visit Newberg at that time as a non-voting member. And then we had an information packet. What ended up was the agreement and the info item got tabled. The council did approve recommendations to Visit Newberg for the initial board of directors. In December of 2018, Visit Newberg filed its articles of incorporation with the state. On January 22nd, council tabled the agreement again to May 20th and directed the TLT committee to come back with some startup costs for Visit Newberg. On January 30th of 2019, Visit Newberg held their organizational meeting, and representatives from Visit Newberg are here this evening, as well as their legal counsel. On January 31st, an email went out to the TLT committee and to the marketing subcommittee that their functions had been disbanded. That actually their terms had ended in December of 2018. They had graciously agreed to stay on up to 3 additional months to work through the Visit Newberg proposal. And on December 17th, this ties back to the grants, is that the council awarded $14,000 to the Camellia Festival out of the TLT funds. Three years in history in 10 minutes or less. You can't read this. Things don't always copy well. But the TLT marketing committee met and was discussing the initial startup costs. And based upon those discussions, what you have up there is a rounded total of $150,000. And so that was estimated to be about $10,000 for outside services to go through recruitment for an executive director, $25,000, and this was covering a period of March 1st through June 30th. So I got to make sure we clarify that. The executive director salary was talked about at $25,000, so we took $75,000 for a year, broke that down into 4 months. That's how $25,000 came up. For the benefits, again, we took the similar model, numbers that had been put together in the fall of 2018. For benefits, broke that down to a 4-month period. Chamber of Commerce staff support, that $8,000. Again, that was conversations that were held back in the fall of 2018 Visit Newberg, having negotiations with the chamber to utilize office space and staff support space to do that. And so you can see this office space lease is about $8,000. And then there's some ancillary costs. And so there's costs probably maybe for desks and chairs. That will need to be negotiated. Well, Visit Newberg will need to dive deeper into that. We talked about laptops, cell phones, cell service, travel and expenses over that 4-month period, about $2,500. There's bank services, organization memberships. Often memberships, when you apply for a membership, it's for a year period, so we had to factor that into it. Entertainment, dues and subscriptions and contingency was $10,000. So when you add that up, it came roughly to $150,000. Based on conversations I've had with Visit Newberg, they've identified some adjustments and modifications to these numbers, and they're here tonight, and they can speak to that. But where they're at now is at about $275,000, maybe a little less than that. One of the things is that the city engaged Mr. Bridges to help establish Visit Newberg. And so from the TLT funds, we've been paying for those legal expenses. The city attorney and I have talked, and in some email communications back to Mr. Bridges, is that that obligation, we believe, continues through getting their 1024 form for a 501c6 process. So there's legal services and outside services to do that. And we can parse that down a little bit more, but that way you can at least get the context. And so that's why that 275 might be a little bit lower, because we might use existing funds that we already have. All of this comes out of the TLT pot. So what are the next steps in the world of tourism? So on February 19th, council is going to review the startup costs. The city's going to inform the chamber to use its existing funds. So we have a $145,000 contract with the chamber to do the visitor center and to do marketing. When we started down this path with Visit Newberg in real earnest in the summer into the fall, we asked the chamber, don't spend the marketing money, so that money could come back and would end up going to Visit Newberg. With the discussions that have occurred, what we've now lost is that opportunity, and the chamber is being approached about marketing opportunities. And so we want to release that $40,000 to let them continue to do marketing activities until Visit Newberg, we get the funding allocation done, they get the startup money, and then I'll get to the piece where they have to come back with some additional paperwork. Visit Newberg will need to obtain its 501c6 status, and I mentioned that with their legal counsel and assistance outside to do that process. As has been proposed, Visit Newberg would have negotiations on office space, where they would be located. There's going to need to be negotiations between the city and Visit Newberg on the agreement that was already brought forward to you back in December and then tabled again on January 22nd. So that's where we get to the May of 2020 is we're anticipating coming back with an agreement, a Visit Newberg business plan and budget. That date may shift. It may have to shift into June. Part of this is predicated on how long will it take Visit Newberg to do their recruitment, hire, and get an executive director on board, and then we need to give that executive director enough time to look at the agreement, have discussions with their board to put together a budget and a business plan. Staff will need to continue to administer the outstanding grants that have already been awarded. Those are the Destination Development and Marketing grants. The City Council is going to have to review a modification to the chamber contract. We've already started those discussions again in the fall about what those numbers may be. So again, that may be a May, June of 2019 timeline when that comes back. And then in the future, thinking past June 30th, there would be quarterly reports from Visit Newberg that would come back to the City Council. There would be an annual business plan that would have to be prepared and a budget that would come back to the City Council for approval as well.
I have a question. All right, so, so we'll get new numbers, I assume, for the startup budget before the 19th of February. Right now, you've got them.
Well,
Okay, cool, all right. So
I
we can
would,
get 'em
I'd say,
tonight.
the staff report has been submitted.
Okay.
Into the process, into the queue for the 19th. Based upon the discussion tonight, when nobody's making a decision, if there's some direction you want me to go, I can go in and modify that staff report and that spreadsheet to reflect the discussions this evening.
Okay, and we can hear hopefully from the folks from.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, from Visit Newberg. And then one other question, will grant money continue to be a part of this in terms of, for activities, Camellia Festival and this kind of thing, or how will that be
No.
handled? No, okay,
The premise is that the TLT funds would be collected by the city. The city keeps 65% of the TLT funds, which goes to the general fund, 35%, 35.01, Matt, 35.1, to be specific, would go to the TLT program.
okay,
That would then be passed through based upon the agreement in the budget, go to Visit Newberg. The only funds that would be retained in the TLT fund would be based upon the large grants and how that money is metered out for those programs. But all of those three hopefully would be done within a year, no more than 2 years.
okay. Yeah. Any, Patrick?
It's TLT, of course I have questions, right? Doug, the first thing that popped in my brain when I saw this topic and then saw your outline is, with the budget timeline for the city also going on at the same time, do we need to have this work done before July 1st in the next fiscal year, or is staff gonna kind of guesstimate and?
I'm going to imagine I'm going to propose a budget numbers to the finance director and the city manager that will anticipate Visit Newberg and structure it that way.
Okay, so my question would be that May date. If we hit that May date, we should still be okay for the city budget, right? Then we'll have
Well, the
solid
budget
numbers.
committee will be done, and Matt, what's the percentage change? There's a budget law, there's a certain percentage change that, between the budget committee that gets to the council that you can work within.
Okay,
I don't remember what that number is, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
But by the time we get to May, the budget committee work will be done. So I'm intending to put together a budget that will show that, as we've talked about, approximately $323,000 being passed through to Visit Newberg. And then you'll see the numbers for the destination development grants that we have that I will be administering.
Okay, so just, we should keep that in mind when we get that proposal, so that way we're not tinkering and kind of messing up our
Right.
city budget at the same time.
And I'll also have to look at, remember, we estimated that there would be about $499,000 at the end of this fiscal year. It would be what I call one-time money. The startup money would come out of that pot of roughly $499. But we've also been paying for outside legal services. There was the $14,000 grant to the Camellia Festival. We'd also anticipated roughly $40,000 coming back for the chamber by having the chamber do that marketing for the next 5 months. So that number, don't get fixated from what you saw in the past. It's going to change as we move forward and you see it through the budget process.
You also mentioned on the presentation here, the bottom, it was 150,000, and then you mentioned 250. That extra money from the 150 to the 250 is for the legal costs to do the 501c3, is that correct?
What was shared with me, we had up there the number of about 25,000 for executive director for a 4-month period. What was shared with me is that Visit Newberg was looking at the full cost, the 75,000.
Oh, okay, for the full.
And then where we had roughly 15,000 for professional fees, Visit Newberg was saying, well, maybe that's 40,000, but that was predicated, what's the city going to pay versus what they would need to pay for their ongoing.
Okay,
And then the contingency we had identified as 10,000, and the number I got in the last couple of days, they were looking at 60,000 for
okay,
a contingency number.
okay. And then one last one, and I'll be quiet. The release of the 40,000 for the chamber, is that a staff action, or is that something the council has to do?
It's not, you don't have to take an action. It's just, I need to inform you. This
Okay.
is what we're doing, is I've had I've had conversations with Shannon, and we've missed some opportunities, and we just can't afford to keep missing opportunities.
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and utilize that money. It was already budgeted and allocated to be spent. Let's do
Okay.
it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Other questions? I guess one other, just one, and is, do we anticipate, people like the Camellia Festival coming back to us looking for the money? Are they going to be able to exist without the grant?
Well, the discussions that the TLT committee had was the executive director working with these different organizations to help them I can't say write the grants for them, but give them assistance about where they may be able to go to get grant funds, because Travel Oregon has their small grant cycle, and the next one's coming up in May. And so it's trying to help educate different organizations that are putting on events that are attracting tourists, that there are these other sources of funds, not just singly the city of Newberg.
All right, anyone else? Any other questions? All right, thank you, Doug. The good folks from the, first off, transient lodging tax people, thank you for a couple years worth of work, so thank you, right? Thank you all. Thank you very much, right? Would you like to add to any of Doug's report or anything? All right, button to the right and identify yourselves, please.
Dennis Lewis.
I'm Rob Felton, Director of Marketing at George Fox.
And I'm John Bridges, a local attorney. So do you want me to kind of start and lay out what we've done and what we're planning on doing?
Would you like me to lift this up?
Where we are in the process.
Yeah, so, we had to kind of talk through everything in terms of forming a corporation. There's several steps in forming a corporation, and I fully understood the city council's desire to say, thou shalt make these people the directors. Unfortunately, that's not how the law works. So, but I'm happy to report that of the list, you had 9 people you recommended to be on the board of Visit Newberg, and 8 of those 9 were elected as board members. The 9th was only replaced because that person left a job at the Allison. So the people that were elected were Dennis Lewis, who's agreed to be the chair, Rob Felton, who's agreed to be the vice chair, Lonnie Parrish, Megan Carta, Christian Di Benedetti, Pierre at the Allison agreed to step up and take their role, which I think is great, Jessica Bagley, Kathy Martin, and Britta Stewart. So those were essentially your recommendations, and so when we had our organizational meeting, those were the people elected. We've also identified, the organization identified 3 initial ex officio members, and those were Shannon, and Ted Crawford from the city of Dundee, and Ms. Yarnell. So, and we've identified other options, so there could be more ex officio people. So if we thought that there were appropriate partnerships beyond those, then they can be identified and participate. So we've done 3 steps of a 4-step process, but I don't want you to think that that means 75% is done. We filed the articles of organization or incorporation. We drafted organizational meeting minutes and bylaws, and we've held that meeting and adopted the bylaws. The big piece, the 4th step, is there's like an 18 or 20 page IRS form, a 1024. Not very many people file those. In fact, I spent some time before Christmas trying to track down a CPA or a lawyer. And the answer I kept on getting from 4 or 5 different people was, oh, they always show up with that, meaning somebody's already filed it for them. I have tracked down a gentleman by the name of David Atkins that does only not-for-profit work as a lawyer, and he's agreed to be hired as the lawyer that will file that form. And it's the sort of form that they give you 15 months after your organization has started to file the form. And as long as you file it within the 15 months, it relates back to when you started. And you can even have another 12 months after the 15 months. So you've got a big window to do this. And so we're going to contract with Mr. Atkins next week and begin that process. And I'll be kind of the liaison between the organization and Mr. Atkins and be the translator of things through that process. We've also agreed that as I give advice on things unrelated to the IRS issues, then that's Visit Newberg's obligation. So the city's not obligated to pay me for any other services they wish to ask me to help with. So essentially, I'm just going to help with that 4th step. That's the only thing we'll bill. When we discussed the proposed idea of the startup budget, I'll let the other gentleman address the 2 line items that we'd like to see increased. But I had suggested that hiring Mr. Atkins was going to take more than what it was in that startup budget. But then I had subsequent conversations with Mr. Stone and Mr. Rux, and we clarified, no, that won't be on their dime. It'll continue to be on the city's dime, because that's really to get the corporation fully operational. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that process, but I do know that the chair and vice chair want to address 2 of the line items and give you an explanation for why they'd like to have it be a little bit different than on that startup list.
So questions for Mr. Bridges before they move on? Actually, John, I do have one question. So in between today and when the 501c6 is finalized within 15 months or another 12 months, is there a legal entity to which we can give money?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We fully formed the corporation as a state corporation.
Okay.
And, typically, frankly, a lot of times organizations will exist for even longer periods of time and then apply for the identification as a C6.
At the very least, this is Rob Felton. Wanted to address the question of the salary and why we went from getting a 3-month salary to requesting for the full amount. Is that for several of us thought, as we thought about it, people leaving a job and coming to work for a startup basically that only had enough to pay them for 3 months on the books, signed that they knew for sure was there, may actually reduce the quality of your applicants. And we felt that having the entire salary for a year in the coffers would make it a more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on why we're increasing the ask to a full year salary.
And more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on why we're increasing the ask to a full year salary.
We started looking at all the numbers.
And more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on why we're increasing the ask to a full year salary.
We started looking at all the numbers.
And more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on why we're increasing the ask to a full year salary.
We started looking at all the numbers.
And more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on why we're increasing the ask to a full year salary.
We started looking at all the numbers.
And more attractive place for a quality candidate to apply. So that was the thinking on
If we get somebody on board, we start doing things, we'd love to be able to have some resources for them to go forward and do some of these small things that need to be accomplished during that period of time. That money's, in my opinion, not money spent, it's money reserved for those kind of things.
Any questions at all? Oh, sorry, Stephanie.
I have a question. I'm new here, so tell me if I'm totally off track. When we're talking about an executive director, does the committee believe that there are a pool of applicants within the community that would be interested in that position? Or is it something that we'll have to look outside of the community for? And do we think that that salary is one that will draw a good pool of applicants? And how long will it take, do you think, to find someone who wants to do that job?
Marketing guy.
I think we will get applicants. I think there will be some good ones in there. I mean, there's obviously people are going to ask for a higher salary or wish for a higher salary, so that's a fair question. And probably there may be some negotiations depending on the experience of the applicant. We were just discussing the timeline on hiring. We're optimistic that within 2-3 months we might have someone. I mean, we're optimistic.
And one thing that I heard at our meeting was, you know, a lot of the people that are on the board are working or have connections in those fields. So the group decided that they're not going to go right out and hire a headhunting company. Instead, they're going to connect with some of those people that they already know. There has been some recent movement of people in this industry, and so they're aware of that, so they can say, okay, well, here's some new opportunities for these other people. And so that's the benefit of being connected in with what McMinnville's doing and having conversations about their model, and also being connected in with regional organizations, and then even the Oregon State organization that handles those grants.
I do know we've already had one, not really an applicant, but one inquiry from somebody who has managed another entity like this at another city, who may or may not be a great candidate, but we haven't even posted a job, we don't even have any money, but not surprisingly, it's a marketing job in tourism, which is a fairly attractive area, I think.
And our budget is 60 to 75,000, so understand that it could be anywhere in that range.
One other question, I guess, and I don't know if you've thought about this as yet. How important will it be to you all to have this person live in the community? Will that be a consideration? And I'm just going to get up on my soapbox just to generally say, I believe if you're in a position of leadership, you should, to the greatest extent possible, live in this community. That's my soapbox. But anyway, have you given thought to that?
It's not in the job description. Okay, I will say that. But I mean, I would agree with you from my perspective. You know, somebody who's available to run a reporter up into the hills or on call, at least from one member of the committee, or one board member, I would say that would be a plus for a candidate.
I think we agree with you. We're on the same wavelength. on
Okay,
that
well,
one.
very good. Thank you.
We would love that.
Appreciate that. Okay, very good. Any other questions for these fine gentlemen? Anybody? Yeah,
Actually,
Rob.
going to get two things. One, if I can say, a shout out to Doug Rux, who's done very good work with us. Long-suffering is a good word, I think, to describe his work, so I want to give public credit to him. And also, Joe told me to do this, and we've got some posters over there. George Fox is hosting an earthquake preparedness session. I don't know if you've heard of this fellow, Steve Eberline. Actually, my family went over to McMinnville last year to see a presentation by him. And if earthquake preparedness presentations can be entertaining, he actually made it entertaining and not terrifying, which it really is terrifying. But it's a free event, and there's posters over there if you're interested in them.
And if you need an invitation to breakfast, or one of you would like an invitation to breakfast on Thursday mornings, I'm sure that Dennis or I
We'd love to have you
make
join
that
a Rotary group at 7 a.m. at George Fox University. And I would
Thank you. Thank
be
you very
happy to
much.
host anybody that would do that.
Anything else y'all want to pitch while you're out there?
Joe told me
Go
to.
Bruins, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. That's awesome. All right. Anything else for Shannon, hello, Shannon. Shannon Buckmaster, come on up, yeah. Button on the right and state your name, please.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. On behalf of the Chehalis Valley Chamber of Commerce, I'm really excited actually about the developments that have come forward to fully establish Visit Newberg. Looking back at from where I stood on my hire date on June 1st, and fully coming into an appreciation of both the economic development, the outreach, the influence, the community support, and then adding tourism and marketing on top of that, it was very quickly and very clearly apparent that our community is best served by having two full-time advocates for our community in those areas, both in economic development and in tourism and marketing. Just to answer a couple of the points to supplement Mr. Rux's presentation and also the fine presentation by the TLT committee, including Mr. Bridges, so Dennis Lewis and Rob Felton, who have been very gracious over the last several months to bring me up to speed and include me in the conversation. Just a simple note on the marketing funds released. I can certainly speak to the missed opportunities that our community has faced just in the last 8 months since I was appointed to the chamber leadership role. We missed the opportunities to support the Oregon Truffle Festival, the Camellia Festival. We've missed several ad and marketing opportunities. Some of them are smaller, $150, $300. Some were more substantial, $2,000, $3,500, up to an $8,000 ask. But those were vacancies now that we have in our social history for our community and opportunities that we simply can't recover from the last calendar years. So I do appreciate the opportunity to fill in some of those gaps moving forward if those funds are released to promote tourism and marketing. Hopefully we can make a good recovery and that effort, and I already have some fun ideas coming forward just from projects that I've already had to say no to. Also, the budget proposals that the chamber worked very closely with Mr. Rux to propose, I believe, are fairly and transparently assessed. My staff and I actually went through our historical spending back through 2015 to get a fair evaluation, both of what a tourism and marketing director might need available, but also what it would look like to house that individual, the executive director, in our office space with full hot office support based on current real estate projections, as well as a fair evaluation of what it would look like for our staff to support that individual. And that includes answering phone, relaying messages, but it also includes a reliance of historical knowledge or community knowledge that I think it would take for this individual to be successful in our very close-knit community. Along those lines, the executive director would have the full support from the Chamber of Commerce. We clearly want to see this organization and the executive director be successful. First hire for a long time or a long-term position with our city. I don't think it's in our best interest to have turnover in this position or to reach below what we can afford. Really looking at my professional approach, you always look for the best professional help that you can afford, correct? Because that's what helps grow an organization. So we want to make sure that we provide a solid foundation for this individual coming forward. I have received several inquiries through the chamber, I would say 4 to 5 local candidates who are looking forward to when this position is being posted. I do know, however, that at the rate of growth tourism is experiencing in our area, we should consider any qualified candidate, and knowing again that my personal support on behalf of our chamber means that it would not just be a professional integration to the festivals, the committees, the grant organizations, the tourism process, but it would also be an integration into our community. Who should they know? Where should they go? How should they fully adjust to life in Newberg, so that even if we hire somebody outside of our community, we would still welcome them immediately, fully, totally into our cultural way of life. Other than that, I simply offer myself on behalf of the chamber for any questions the council or our mayor or city staff may have.
Questions, anybody? All right, awesome. Shannon, thanks so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Just one other note for the TLT committee. I know you've got Ted on the committee. Had breakfast with Mayor Russ the other day, and he is very interested, as they all are good friends in Dundee are interested. I'm sure you're aware of that, so thank you. All right, anything else on this workshop? On our work
Doug
session?
Rux, one follow-up. And so if there are some adjustments to the startup proposal based upon feedback we've received from Visit Newberg, any general heartache if I make some modifications tomorrow
Anybody? Nope,
for your consideration on the 19th?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that, anything else? Anybody for the good of the order? All right, we are adjourned in the work session. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, you did not know this was going to happen, but we've decided that between the work session and the business session, we're going to have a little musical interlude. So, this is my choice for this evening, okay? And I don't know if you all are familiar with this particular music. I don't want you to read more into this than there really is. Yes, we have 30 churches in our community. Someday we soon may have a synagogue, a mosque, we may have a Shinto shrine, or whatever it is. There's no influence. The name Jesus is mentioned in this music, but this is only for the appreciation of music. Now, this is the first edition of what we'd like to see become a sort of every city council meeting. I would like one of you all to pick a piece of music between each session, and that will be the council and staff playlist. All right, anybody know who this is? Okay, this is the Mississippi Mass Choir, right? That's the Mississippi Mass Choir. Yep, and they are going to play This Morning When I Rose Up. So here you go.
If people could take their seats, we're about to start.
All right, then, as a reminder, the next musical interlude, who is taking that next one? Oh, really? I will. There you go. There you go, Elise. Thank you very much. You've got the next one, and then we'll go from there. Staff, don't be shy. Chief, I want to hear your musical selection for one of these meetings, okay? Thank you. All right. Okay, do I need to say that the language and the music needs to be acceptable for a G audience, folks? All right. All right.
It has bleeps, is that?
Bleeps, yeah, you can bleep it, sure. All right, here we go. City Council business session, February 4th of 2019 is now in session. A roll call, please, Sue.
Counselor Johnson? Here. Counselor Yarnell Holloman? Here. Counselor Curtis Gemeroy? Here. Mayor Rogers?
Here.
Counselor Findley? Here. Counselors Bacon and Corey are excused for this evening.
Thank you. All right, first off, public comments. Okay, public comments reminder, there are forms on the table right there next to Paul Chu, right there. And if you do want to make a public comment about general items, please do so. After that, we now have, I believe, a presentation about the independent audit. Good evening, button on the right, and please state your name. Names.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Matt Zook, your Finance Director.
Brad Bingenheimer, partner with the accounting firm of Bolt, Carlisle and Smith.
So I'll introduce the topic. Every year we have a financial audit, and we engage a qualified municipal auditing firm to review our finances and express an opinion on those financial statements. And the set of financial statements we're looking at tonight are for the fiscal year 2017-2018. And we received an unmodified opinion, which is the best result on those financial statements, on December 21st. And every year we invite Brad Bingenheimer, partner with Bolt, Carlisle and Smith, to come and talk directly to you. You have an electronic copy in the packet. You also will be getting a hard copy, which I encourage you to put right underneath your TV and prop it up just a little bit higher, unless you want to read it before you go to sleep. That being said, it's very exciting. That's what Brad makes his living doing. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to talk directly to you about the report.
Thank you, Matthew. If you've ever seen one of these documents, it's a very thick document. I think the mayor, you pulled it out just now. Perfect. It's a very thick document, and I kind of want to give you a breakdown of kind of what's in it, and then give you a few highlights out of it. So the document is broken up into essentially 4 sections. The first one is an introductory section. This is a section written by management of the city. It gives, there's a letter of transmittal, there's an organization chart, gives a page of the officers and members of the governing body, and then a certificate of achievement. And this is a certificate of achievement of financial reporting issued by the Government Finance Officers Association. So the city has chosen to participate in this program where GFOA awards governments for excellence in financial reporting. And the city's had this award now for several years, and we've been pleased to be partnering with the city in that. The second section, which is the longest section of it, is the financial section. That includes our report and all the financial statements, and supplementary information that supports those financial statements. Then starting about page 140-ish, you start with the statistical information. The statistical information provides historical information over a 10-year period, as well as other types of information. which really, if you look at it in terms of some of these longer-term trends, you kind of get to see it, have a picture of how well the city is doing over time. And then the very last section is a final report of ours under the requirements of Oregon, the minimum standards for audits of municipal corporations. So as Matt said, we have issued our report on the financial statements, and in our opinion, these financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position and results of operations of the city of Newberg for the year ended June 30, 2018. Give you some idea of where the city ended up at the end of the year. So the city has, in the financial statements, even that has subsections, but the first 2 pages of the financial statements is a statement of net position, statement of activities. These are kind of very broad ranged financial statements that try and give an overall economic view of the city on a full accrual basis, similar to what you'd see in a governmental type, in a business type environment. So the city ended the year in a net position of $150 million. And that's actually an increase of $6.8 million from the prior year. So improvement in net position, indication of improving financial health. So when you see, negatives there, that you start to wonder what's going on. So positive, development in net position for the year. And then when you start looking at some of the funds, now obviously the general fund is the most important fund of the city. This is where most of your activity comes. It's where you're funding your general services primarily from taxes. So the general fund ended the year just over $4 million fund balance, and that's an increase of $505,000. So good, addition to the general fund. And overall, your governmental funds did increase their fund balance by $4.4 million. Now, I want to point out that, we did have a new pronouncement that was implemented this year. This year, the city had to implement the provisions of Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 75. And this is a statement covering other post-employment benefits. Now, the question I've been asked is, well, what other post-employment benefits? We provide pensions to our people, what else? Well, the other post-employment benefits come from basically 2 sources. Number one is, under Oregon law, the city has to allow retirees to continue on the city's group plan, even though they are paying their share of the premiums. It's still a benefit to them. Because you think about it in terms of this way, if you have retirees in your demographic pool for your insurance, well, retirees use health insurance more. And so that has the tendency to cause your premiums to be higher than they would be without them. Likewise, the retiree, they are participating in a group paying a premium, where if they had to find comparable insurance, they'd probably be paying a much higher premium. So it's the idea that there's this other post-employment benefit in terms of health benefits that they earn over their working career. So this is through the use of an actuary trying to capture that liability and present it in the financial statements. As I said, there's 2 sources of it. The second one is you do have some employees that participate in Oregon PERS. Oregon PERS also has a health insurance component, the retiree health insurance account. So that also is something that the city contributes into, and you get a small share of the overall liability for the whole state. You get your proportionate share of that. So that's new standards that came into this year. We did have a prior period adjustment to implement those, and the city fully implemented that in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. The other thing I wanted to point out was right after the notes of the financial statement, you'll see a short section called Required Supplementary Information. And this is going to provide you some ultimately 10-year information on that GASB 75 liability and also your net pension liability. So those pages, and those start on page number 75, if you're wondering. Essentially, this will give you kind of a broader view of what's happening to the city's net position as it relates to these two items. Pensions and these other post-employment benefits are very significant liabilities of the city, and they really do significantly impact the city's net position and the change in net position each year. So I always encourage people, look at that over the periods they're presented. We only have right now 4 years because the requirements only came in 4 years ago. But in time, we'll see 10 years. I think at that point in time, you're looking to see some trends of, the retirement benefits and the pension liabilities that the city has out there. And then following that required supplementary information, we have details of all the other funds, budget to actual information. I'm not going to go over that in detail. It's there for you to look at. And then the last item in the report is our report on in compliance with the Oregon regulations under the Oregon minimum standards. Those standards require us to do two things. First thing, it requires us to perform tests to determine did the city comply with specific Oregon laws and regulations. We did note that the only thing where there's any non-compliance was there was a couple items that were where you had expenditures in excess of appropriations. That happens. It's something we like to, of course, see not happen, but they do happen upon occasion. The amounts are not significant, but we do need to report them because they were a violation. The second thing it talks about is internal controls. Now, as part of every audit, we obtain an understanding of the entity's internal controls. And we do that because, one, we will be able to determine where there's good controls and where there's weaker controls. And from auditors, we want to be looking at those areas where there might be weaker controls. That's where there's greater risk of a misstatement. When there's good controls in place, it means that we can kind of rely upon things being done correctly internally, and we don't need to be coming in and checking as closely. So it helps us in that risk assessment in performing our audit. And secondly then, if we do find anything that we believe is significant enough that needs to come to your attention, we'd be bringing that forth to you. And I'm pleased to say we don't have any of those. That we found that the city's internal controls are usually very good. They have good checks and balances, good segregation of duties, and good supervisory review and approval of items. So that's a quick summary of our report. I'd be happy to sit here and read the whole 171 pages to you if you'd like, but I think we'd all go to sleep very quickly.
Let me check with the room. Anybody want to have it read? 168, but no, I think we're probably good. I think we're probably good. Matt?
I believe you did ask earlier about a song, so we could sing it as well.
I could only imagine.
So, thank you, Brad. I did want to point out just a few things that really essentially thank Caleb Lippert, Assistant Finance Director, and Dan Coiler, Senior Accountant, who are also in the audience. The fruit of the awards that we've received and the clean audits that we've gotten, back when I started here 4 years ago, we were behind on an audit and had not even completed a CAFR, the full comprehensive report, for 2 years because of staffing and transition and turnover. And prior to that, as Brad mentioned, the city had 20 plus years. In fact, on the wall back here, there's a plaque with all the different years, I believe, that the city has gotten. It goes back into the the 90s at least. So after 2 years of not getting that, we're back on that. And part of that was getting the appropriate level of staff to do this. And so we believe that's a huge benefit to the city. So the other piece is that at the tail end of the report, I indicated the status of our relationship with Bolt, Carlin Smith. They've served 5 years on their current contract, and this is the last year. I went back and did a little bit of history. They've been with the city since 2004 and have each of the last 3 times competitively bid and successfully won the request for proposals that we go out and seek every 5 years. So we're going to be doing that again this spring. and we're getting ready to send out the advertisement, and we expect to get 6 to 10 responses, and look forward to awarding a contract in April or May, and then staying on track. So the request for tonight is essentially by way of motion that the council accept the auditor's report and the audited financial statements.
Any questions, anyone? No, I just, well, one, I guess, is there the equivalent of a management letter in this, as you would, but you said there's no internal control issues, is there not a management letter that goes with it, or is that?
Yeah. So, under professional standards, we issue a letter to those charged with governance,
Okay.
Governing body. Several of you got them earlier.
Okay.
And city staff asked me to email it to those that
Right,
didn't.
did see it, okay.
Yeah, and so that email, I didn't get that out until today.
Right.
I was gone until last week. Then if you're gone this time of year, it takes you a week just to get your head above water.
Right,
So
right.
I finally got above water enough to send that. But essentially, it just summarizes the audit information. Talks about certain things like we didn't have any disagreements with management on anything. Any adjustments that we came up with were made by management. Really, we didn't have a lot of significant issues this year. I really do want to thank city staff for their cooperation in the audit. When we come here, we ask 1,001 questions. We want to look at 1,000,001 different documents, I think. And they've always been very helpful in providing us information. And a lot of the information we get early from them, which really helps expedite the whole process. It does take quite a bit to put this whole document together. And there's lots of people that look at it and review it and read it and double check it. So it's been a good relationship. Appreciate the city's efforts.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess this is the sentence that we were looking for, and so I'm happy to always read these. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and aggregate remaining fund for the information of the city of Newberg. Isn't that the sentence we want? Thank you. That is exactly what we want to hear. That means clean audit. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? We need a motion to adopt or to accept? No?
Well, the
Do we?
recommendation in the staff report is just to accept the report and the
Okay.
financial statements.
Mr. Mayor?
By motion.
Yes, sir. Patrick?
I would move that we accept the auditor's report and the annual financial statements.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Elizabeth with a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, and congratulations on a clean audit. Nicely done. Thank you. Managers report, Joe.
Mayor and council, audience, in your email today, you received a copy, the full report of just an update over the last 2 weeks. So this covers some of the highlights in there. We've also sent it to the press and the Buckminster, and I don't think I sent it to Dave, so I'll have to send it to the news while we're sitting here. Kind of a busy time, even though it's the holidays. Some pretty significant things happened. We attended the Newberg Dundee bypass, and earlier today, if you haven't had a chance yet, check your emails, and it has an update of the bypass. This is provided by ODOT. But something that very significantly happened is that in the bypass committee where Councilmember Johnson and the mayor were there, is that the committee as a whole said the political, on the national level, the political climate has changed. The Democrats have taken control, or they're now the majority in the House, and this is a real unique time in history where Oregon's delegation are in very, very key positions, and particularly in public works, and particularly Representative DeFazio from the Springfield, Eugene area. He sits as the chair of the Public Works Committee. And in that, on his very first day, he said he knows us very well. The two construction companies that did the bypass are from Eugene and Springfield. He's indicated to us he's very pleased with what he's seen on the bypass. And so he started out his reports to the press saying, I believe in earmarks. and this is a change, where it sets a particular project in legislation and carries forward. Now, that does not follow through to Senator McConnell on the Senate side, but in this position, people, and he's agreed, he says, we need to finish the bypass. So our strategy up to this point has been, let's go after, it's a big project. The first phase about 192 million, and just about the same amount for the next phase, and then the final phase. And folks on the commission, by consensus, said, we think we should go after the funding for the whole project, which means going all the way from Rex Hill to Dayton. And so that's a big change, and now that's being reflected in presentations to the congressional delegation and to the state for funding there. So the mayor at the end of this month is accompanying Downtown Coalition Executive, the mayor of McMinnville, Grand Ron, Dave Hagenberg, the chair of the bypass committee, and I don't know, and Mayor Russ, and they're going back to DC. And the whole pitch on that one is to go to our delegation and some key other folks to say, let's finish this project. And that's going to be reflected by, I think, April is what Representative Fazio has been given as marching orders from the Speaker of the House to come forward with the first draft of a public works bill. So that's big deal and good news. We also attended the Transit Board to work through two things. One is the permanent representative from Newberg community to the board, and figuring out, well, does not an elected official go in? The way the County Commission on Transit changed slightly, so they now find areas of interest, basically, but they want someone from Newberg. So we've proposed council member, Holloman to go up there. Scott Essen, as a council member, was on that. He's now switched to a citizen member and is going to an at-large. So at your next meeting, the mayor will have his recommendations for those appointments. But even in the meantime, both are, getting the material and working through the next stages of the Transportation Commission. One of the things that they're doing, and it's on your agenda for next time or the time after, the transportation plan. So at your next meeting, you're going to be asked to pass the county-wide transit plan that has items in Newberg. And there's several things, but the biggest one, and this is also some other news come up, is, look, there's a recommendation to create a downtown transit area. So staff, primarily Jay and Lindsay from Public Works and myself, have given to the county about 13 half-block areas in the downtown area as things of, do you like this from your transit driver side? Then we'll come back to full council within the next month with the recommendations. So Jay's working on some, they're like photoshopped enhancements of what a street would look like as a trans street. So there's more to come for you. Also, this last week, the mayor and Doug and I went to a housing summit that was sponsored by the Housing Authority. Part of that is the Housing Authority would like to do more projects here, but they see a need throughout our county for a lot of the agencies that both have needs but are providing different parts of transportation to talk to each other. And it was about transportation and then how that ties to housing. The concept or the idea was housing first, but it was also transportation. And so a lot of groups came together. We met some new people that we didn't even know did housing, or at least a few of us didn't know, doing housing throughout the county and some up here. And so out of that, I think, merging with the work that's being done on our housing affordability and the Newberg housing, both the city commission and the private group will, I think, result in some other options for us and some other partnerships. Also attended the Historical Society, and I think you've seen this all already, but Leah and the library have combined with the Historical Society, and it seems like this is a feel-good thing, but it has large implications throughout the state. And that's that coming up in within 2 weeks, will be Ewing Young's birthday that's celebrated at Ewing Young Elementary. And then the following Saturday, Friday, right?
Saturday, the 16th at 10:30 a.m. Who was Ewing Young? Stories of Old Oregon. Leah Griffith, Newberg Library.
And why that's significant is that this is a state-declared day. We don't have those kinds of things. We have up there, you see the camellia, okay? That was done by the legislature. Same thing happening with Ewing Young. And so the historical preservation kind of part of our community, and some very significant people, including those that helped lobby to get that as a state day and a state designation, are saying that, and it's in our kind of tourism plan, that one very real area of tourism is historical tourism. People come for this kind of stuff. So this is very significant that the library's gone that extra step to kind of reinforce what the kids have been doing at Ewing Young Elementary year in, year out. So it's something really worth going, and it fits within our economic development strategy. Doug Rux has had the meeting with at least one investor as part of the request for interest on the Butler property, so more to come. And then Doug is also working with SEDCOR. That's the economic development group that's been retained by the county to help smaller cities, and with us, just give us advice about economic development. And it will be a proposed summit for people in town and investors. And there are investors from around the world that, because of this fund that we have, and we share with 88 other places in Oregon, they want to invest outside money. And it could be from India, well, it could be from overseas, but it's related to being able to use a credit of capital gains, which is domestic. And so it's other parts of the country are going to be looking to put money into projects if we can present them to them, and it can be residential, it can be commercial, it can be industrial. So Doug's working on that, and you remember the date that they were proposing of that?
Towards the end of February.
So we'll send an email out with that. And that's just something to invite anyone you know that might be having a sale. You know, an old farm, a family farm, they sell it and they don't want to pay all of the capital gains to the state and federal government, which can be 40%. They can invest it, and 15% of that can be forgiven. And the last one is we just had our monthly emergency preparedness meeting with outside agencies, just continuing to work through that. You'll hear much more of that in your detailed discussion of council priorities at your next meeting. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for the city manager? Yep, Elizabeth.
I just have a question about you were talking about the bypass, Representative DeFazio. All that sounds really great. I'm just wondering if we think that going for all of the funding is going to speed up the process in any way, or if we think that it might not go through and therefore prohibit or delay the process in any way.
Well, I think from the discussion, and Patrick, you can add to this, or Joe, the thought is that this is sort of the most ideal time we're likely to see in our history because of the federal delegation and where they are. And the thought is, rather than keeping to say phase 1, phase 2, phase 1W, et cetera, let's go for the whole thing when we've got, the representation, and hopefully, and that comes from the consultants. That's where that logic is coming from. So hopefully so. Sure, of course.
And do we think that if we did get it through, which would be great, would that speed up the process at all? Like, would we just go, rather than going phase 2, phase 3, we would just barrel on through?
I think so. That's the hope, that we just say, yeah, from here to Dayton, from Rex Hill to Dayton. There we go. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else on the city manager's report? All right, looks like we're now on to council appointments. And do we need to do these individually, Doug, or can they go in mass?
They're listed individually on the agenda, so they need to be done
Individually. Okay. All right. For the Riverfront Master Plan Citizens Advisory Committee, we are proposing Commissioner Casey Kula for that. Do I hear any discussion? I'll entertain a motion, hearing none.
So moved.
So moved. Thanks, Stephanie. Second? Second, Patrick. Any further discussion? All in favor of Casey Kula joining the Riverfront Master Plan Citizens Advisory Committee signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Commissioner Kula is on the Riverfront Master Plan Advisory Committee. Next, a member to the Housing Needs Assessment Project Advisory Committee, Mr. Jack Kriz. Any discussion on this proposed appointment?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move we appoint or consent to the mayor's appointment of Jack Kriz to the Housing Needs Assessment Project Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Elizabeth. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, Mr. Kriz is now a member of the Housing Needs Assessment Project Advisory Committee. And finally, for the RCA Community Visiting Advisory Committee, Lynn Montoya Quinn from PCC. Do I hear any further discussion? Or a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Patrick?
I move we appoint Lynn Montoya Quinn, or consent to the mayor's appointment of Lynn Montoya Quinn to the Community Visioning Advisory Committee.
Do I hear a second? Second. Elise? All in favor? Any further discussion? Now, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, Lynn Montoya Quinn is now a member of the Community Visioning Advisory Committee. Thank you. All right, we've now reached the point of public comments. So if anyone has a public comment to make, I see no forms. If you are interested, there are forms on that table, and if not, we will move right along to the consent calendar. Consent calendar it is. Patrick?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Elizabeth, second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the consent calendar passes. Moving along to new business, item 9 on your program. Newberg Cultural District Annual Report for 2018. Leah.
Thank you. Leah Griffith, Newberg Public Library Director and also Secretary of the Newberg Cultural District Board, and that is the capacity that I am here tonight. In your packet is copies of the slideshow that I have, and this is basically an informational presentation. The IGA that the city and CPRD signed in 2013 included the requirement of a annual report to the council and to the CPRD board to bring them up to date with what's been going on with the cultural district. And we are here tonight, and then we will be at the CPRD board meeting on February 28th. So if you want to hear it again, you're welcome to come back. So, all right, there is the Newberg Cultural District. It is not the Cultural Center, it is not the Newberg Library. We are the two facilities that are the largest facilities in the area and the public facilities in the area. But it is all the land surrounding our two areas. The other public land that's there is the little house that's next to the parking lot that CPRD purchased a couple of years ago, and the Newberg Downtown Coalition is in that area. And so we are in that area. So the intergovernmental agreement was signed in 2013, and as we started into that, there was a lot of activity going on with this Newberg Cultural District. We had meetings with like 50 people in attendance and lots of discussions and all sorts of things. And so the IGA reflected that, where we had CDAG and all these other committees and all of that kind of thing. Well, apparently, we've done a good job in the last 6-7 years. Robert Suppy has served on the board during that time, and we've gotten to the point where, to be honest, we're lucky if we get 1 or 2 people showing up to a meeting, which I think says that things are going well. Things weren't as scary as maybe they thought they were going to be when we started having events in the cultural district and that type of thing, because that was really what the neighbors were concerned about was, they were going to have crazy rock concerts and all sorts of other things going on that was really going to impact their quality of life. And so we are at the time to revise the IGA, and it's gone to both Truman Stone, our city attorney, as well as John Bridges, the CPRD attorney, and I just got John's responses back. We're melding those together, and you'll be getting the IGA. It'll go to the Cultural District Board, so you'll get a chance to review it at that point, and then it'll come back to you folks probably April by the time it gets through the council process and the CPRD process. So, okay, this screen is now wrong, I guess. The City of Newberg representative is now Stephanie Findley, or will be. I'm not sure when that formal appointment will take place. Teresa Arnold was just selected by the neighbors to replace Robert after, again, I want to thank Robert Suppy for his 6 years on the committee and his really dedication to the process. Sean Andres, the Cultural Center Director, who has been here for, 1.5 years. Don Clements, but he's had Jim McMaster representing him, so we're not quite sure who's going to be representing Park and Recreation now that Jim has retired. And then myself as the secretary, and I'm retiring in June. So you can kind of see there's a concept going on here, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to get the IGA done. In fact, we did most of the work on it while Robert was still on the board, so that we could have that history that he and I had from the beginning, and as well as Jim McMaster. So, because it's going to be basically kind of an all-new group real soon, and we didn't want to lose that history until we were totally gone. So we have established a meeting schedule for this coming year. January, March, June, and October is the plan. And again, anytime additional meetings are needed, they'll be called. So, but we just felt those were the good dates that we needed to have different events. And October is always what we call our end of summer meeting. We make sure that we get the word out to the neighbors and such to come and kind of let us know how the summer went, because that's really what we do, is the outside events, and there's only the tree lighting in December. Most of the events are occurring late spring and then through the summer. And again, as I said, we manage the outside areas of the cultural district, not the inside uses of the library or the cultural center. But again, occasionally those do impact, because if there's a big event inside one of our facilities, it may not work to have an event on the outside as well. The board develops rules of operation. It reserves events. We currently delegate that to the cultural center staff. We approve design elements, including street furniture, signage, murals, and other elements that define the district, kind of trying to bring something together so that everybody's not off doing their own thing. We can at least have some coordination. And then coordinate with the city and CPRD for maintenance and construction activities. Because when you look at that layout, basically half the land is owned by CPRD and the other half is pretty much owned by the city, with a few other private ownership on our side of the street. Let's see. So what we did in 2018, a lot of what we did was just reserve the space. Tunes on Tuesday, I'm sure many of you were there. The Camellia Festival, the Lavender Festival, Public Works Day, Oktoberfest, library events through the summer. The summer lunch program was a new one that we had this year, where we had 50 to 100 kids and families there every day at noon to get a free lunch. And that was a really great event. And then the library did programs once a week at least. We did some STEM programs and such in conjunction with that. And of course, our recent tree lighting is also a big event in the cultural district. Tunes on Tuesday, you can see a pretty good crowd there. That is pretty much the biggest events for those 8 weeks in the summer that occur. Anywhere from 1,000 people to maybe 2,000 is about max. It's probably getting close to the point of really maxing out that space. But as a community, we don't have another location yet. But I think that will be something that it's definitely being talked about. Lavender Festival is a wonderful event that's there. The Camellia Festival, Public Works Day that the city does is a great fun event, except for those horns honking all for hours. And our library summer events are always held on the lawn there as well. And the Christmas tree lighting, of course. What did we do in 2018? Well, we held regular meetings. Public did noticed. We held a few more last year, especially working on that IGA process. That took us quite a few meetings to review that process. This is the 4th year we've had the neighborhood parking signs for Tunes on Tuesday. That was really one of our biggest issues. And we developed these in conjunction with the police chief. If you notice, it says by order of the chief of police. And we've had basically the same group of neighbors who are like right in the close-in areas ask for these signs every year. This year 8, last year 9, previous year 8, previous year, the first year 7. And it's almost always the same group that have no off-street parking. They don't have driveways, they don't have anything. And it's worked really well. I think maybe once we've had somebody that had to be towed, and they were really egregious. They shouldn't have parked anywhere close to where they were. They should have been towed. But it's really worked well, and we really haven't had other significant parking complaints. We listen for it, we watch for it, and just haven't really had them, and try to address them if we have gotten them. But I don't get them at the library. I think Doug's hasn't really had anything at his desk. The biggest issue we had was we needed to get the information out a little bit better about how to get the signs, because we had one person last year that got sent about 5 different places before they found me to actually issue them the signs. So we'll be getting that worked out. We worked with the Early Bird Rotary on the shade structure, which is now there for the splash pad, which is great. We worked on updating the parking management plan. We had all new staff at the cultural center, and so that was something we had to work through because they weren't quite sure exactly how that parking management plan worked. And so we spent some time working through with that. So we've got that was one of our activities. We use a city festival street designation. We don't use all of the other ways that you can close a street like in your neighborhood for a block party. This was set up about 3 or 4 years ago. And basically it's one form, one application, and it eliminates people having to go and knock on the neighbor's house and say, could we close the street for this event? Which is really not a very friendly thing to have to do to somebody who lives in the neighborhood. And this way, it all gets taken care of in one application. Everybody who's involved knows about the event, and it's had no complaints from the neighbors or anybody about it. It's really worked very well. It works very smoothly with the police department as well. They have all the information they need. It then goes out to Public Works and the police and fire, and just everybody knows about what's going on, and to all of the people in the area. So we all know that the street's being closed for this event or that event. And again, we've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years, and it's worked out very well. Again, working on that IGA. Robert's departure was the first significant changes in the board membership, and as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of changes coming up in 2019. We do have a web page that one of the things I'm doing before I retire is getting that figured out, because we haven't been updating it as much as we should. The records are all here, and I need to get them onto that web page. So that will be one of my things that I have to do before I retire. We do send out a monthly e-newsletter. Have about 70 people on that list. You folks all get that as council members. For 2019, Again, the same events that we've had, that we usually have all this time. I'm not quite sure if there may be some interest from the farmers market. They had been at the cultural district and they moved down to the Butler property, but as that progresses, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. So we may see a request from them to move back to the cultural district. Getting that IGA to both the city and CPRD, and then again looking at options for funding permanent signage to direct visitors to the areas. You saw we weren't successful with the TLT application, but we're still looking at the signage. The logo on the side is part of the signage that was designed through a grant a few years ago. Looking at public arts groups, we've had some continuation and discussion with that. Getting the website up and working, continuing to work with new neighbors, and again, the new board members, so that they're aware of what's going on and that kind of thing, and continue the process, because again, we've got a pretty significant amount of turnover on the board all at once. And the cultural district is really a place for people to enjoy cultural and arts experiences, and it's also enhancing Newberg as a destination for tourists, because we do get a lot of people from out of town coming to events at the cultural district. So if anyone has any questions or anything, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Elizabeth.
Well, first I just want to say thank you. I think the cultural district is fantastic, and I think it's really enhanced just that area and being a fantastic place for folks of Newberg and visitors to convene and celebrate and learn and all that. So thank you so much for your work. I just had one really quick question, and that's basically, if someone had an idea for the cultural district, do they talk to you? Do they show up to a meeting? What's the best way to go about that?
They can do either way. They can talk to me as the secretary. They could talk to Sean as the chair. They could send an email through the newsletter. There's contact information. Actually, all the board members' emails are on the newsletter that goes out every month. And we're still sending that out every month, whether we're meeting or not, so that people still get that information.
Follow on? Sure. And then my other question is just at that end of summer meeting, you said that you kind of asked neighbors, and did folks show up to that one and have things to say, or still just kind of no one was around?
You know, the first year or so, we had a nice crowd show up. This year, Robert, I think we had 2, maybe 3, which I look at that as we must be doing something right, because when the people were first coming and really, showing up in mobs, which I would say mobs would be the right word, it was because they were scared what this cultural district was going to do to their neighborhood and the livability of their neighborhood. And apparently, and I'm saying that without absolute proof, but apparently it's not as big a concern for people. The reality has not been as bad as what they thought it might be.
Any other questions for Leah? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you to you and all of the committee. And Robert Suppy, thank you for your years of service as well. Thank you. All right. All right, let me just check. If I could get a show of hands, are a bunch of you here, anybody for visioning? Who is here for the visioning? You and your lonesome. All right, so let's go as in order of the agenda. All right, Resolution 2019-3523. Is that you, Mr. Rux? No, it's Keisha. All right. All right.
Keisha Owens, Assistant Planner. Staff is requesting council action on Resolution 2019-3523 to initiate an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code, Newberg Comp Plan and Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to allow duplexes and triplexes in the R1 zone. And staff is doing this because community members wanted to address missing middle-level housing through the allowance of duplexes and triplexes in the R1 zone. Therefore, staff recommends that council adopt resolution number 2019-3523, initiating an amendment to the Newberg Comp Plan and Municipal Code Title 15 Development Code for the allowance of duplexes and triplexes in the R1 zone.
Patrick?
Yeah, oh, you saw me coming a mile away.
I know, right? I saw you.
Good evening, and thank you for the great report. One of the questions I had was mostly just a process one, is I understand the legislature and Speaker Kotek has addressed this specifically as something they would like to do. And so my question is, from a workload standpoint, would it be more efficient to wait and see what kind of state rules come down before we start our local options? Or can it work in conjunction is basically what the question is.
I'm going to turn to Doug Rux for that.
Thank you, Patrick. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. Yes, so remember, this came out of the issues with Housing Newberg, the proposals that were brought in December of 2017. It was one of the 4 that the council identified to work on. We finished the R3, we finished the accessory dwelling units. Next up is a construction excise tax, and then this missing middle housing component. So as we've addressed the issue about current workload with the applications just coming through, we finally got to the point where we could take a deep breath and say, okay, let's initiate this. Now, the legislature, House Speaker Kotek does have some proposal that's going to wind its way through the session over the course of the next 5 months or so. My intent is to track what we're doing, to follow along with that. I don't want to get out in front and bring something forward to the Planning Commission and to the council, then to have to turn around and possibly modify it. But as we go through these processes, every time we've come forward in the last 4 years and brought proposals to the council, is when we initiate these, all we're doing is getting the direction of the council to move forward. There's already been some action that's been taken, identified to do something. This is just the official step for you to say, go do it. Because there's going to be a lot of conversations with Planning Commission members about how this might work. You know, do you have them in mid-block? Do you have them just on corners? What's the lot size going to be? Do they need, is it outright permitted use? Is it a conditional use? Is it a special use? Setbacks, there's lots of things to work through on this, but we want to get the ball rolling so Keisha can start to do an evaluation of other communities, what their regulations are. As I was at Housing Newberg last week, we were talking about, our code actually is detrimental towards building duplexes. But yet, if you look at from kind of a workforce housing component of that, it may be a market product that's out there that we need. So we need to look at that. So we're not going to get ahead of the legislature, but we're going to try to track and parallel what they're doing.
Could I have a follow-up? Sure. And just as a process question for both of you, so we get these. Do you want to know council's opinion now, or would you rather have it be a clean, objective look for the Planning Commission to go and do this work? What I'm concerned about is that this is going to be I'm guessing this is going to come back as an ordinance, correct?
Yes.
With a comp plan change. We're really locked into what we can say and what we can't say once we get to that point, correct?
This is legislative, not
Okay,
quasi-judicial. All of these tonight are all legislative actions.
Okay.
We're always welcome to take the council's views and opinions, but I also caution you that we're not here to get down into the details about the specifics, because we don't know what the answers are yet, because we have not done all of the research and gone through all of the vetting. But if you have ideas, issues, and concerns, yes, we'll take those.
So in other words, Pat, hold on to your ammunition until a later date.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just have a question about why the choice is to add duplexes and triplexes to R1 as opposed to just change the zoning of certain places to like R3 or something like that? And what would be the distinction of an R1 with duplexes and triplexes from an R3 zone?
Well, currently the development code does allow duplexes in R1. Okay. The issue we have is it requires a 10,000 square foot lot. So if you were a developer and your minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, why wouldn't you just divide that parcel and create 2 separate lots and build 2 separate houses?
Sure.
To go through the process of changing the zoning is a very different matter. Now we're down to a quasi judicial issue. There are Measure 49 possibilities where somebody could assert we're reducing the value of their property. It's just a more complex process to go through. And it might even bring about, because we hear this now, if you have R1 and when we've done zone change, the council has approved comp plan and zone changes to R3 and it's next to R1, people say, I don't want that there because what's next to me should be just like what I have.
Touche. No, I think that's good. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, Keisha, thank you. I think we've got public comment from Mr. Robert Suppy. The button on the right, and you've been through this drill before, and state your name. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Robert Suppy, and thank you for the opportunity. And also, welcome to the new faces. I hope you'll find your time here to be rather rewarding. And actually, one counselor kind of stole my thunder tonight because you came up with the same suggestion I'm going to push, but, you know, great minds and all that. I'm before you tonight to recommend a different approach than is before you with this resolution. I recognize that this is a preliminary step in the process, but it still needs careful scrutiny. It can start a process that will use significant staff time and planning commission time that may well be better spent on a different approach. I do recognize the need for affordable housing in Newberg and how this could help with that. I certainly applaud the effort. I do have a couple of concerns on this resolution that I'd like to raise tonight. To start with, I have a great concern about the broad range of properties over which this would apply. Wouldn't it be more sensible to identify specific R1 areas of town where higher density would be appropriate and rezone them? That seems to be a much more analytical approach than making such a significant change to the bulk of residential property in Newberg in one action. My second concern has to do with conversion of existing houses into duplexes or triplexes and the impact on parking. The city has shown, how do I put this, creativity when an application doesn't meet the code for parking. This could become a much greater problem when single-family residents become duplexes or triplexes. An obvious response to my concerns is that these are just the sort of thing that would be worked out through the work of staff, the Planning Commission, and the Council. While I agree that this could be possible with my parking concerns, it doesn't address my initial concern about the very broad scope of this approach. I assume that all of you have witnessed the sort of public response that often accompanies proposals to rezone properties to a higher density, just as Mr. Rux mentioned. Are you really prepared, though, for the response you may get when something very close to such rezoning is being applied to most of the city? Let me urge you to give careful consideration to selective rezoning rather than a method that is as broad as is being proposed here. Thank you.
All right, questions for Mr. Suppy? Anyone? Nope, hearing none. All right. Next, can we ask for further staff comment? Is that appropriate? Yes? Doug or Keisha? Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, Doug Rux, and so as Keisha had indicated, staff's recommendation to adopt Resolution 2019-3523.
Further discussion? Oh, I thought you were going for your button there, Patrick. All right. Anyone?
Yeah, we're
You're
contemplating.
thinking. All right, you're thinking, Patrick.
While they contemplate, I'm going to
Go for it.
kind of raise a couple of, and I'll be contrarian. I personally, I think this could be a good chunk of work to do. Obviously, I have nothing prepared for this, so thank you. I would like to say that between the legislature taking their actions and the concerns that Mr. Suppy has brought up, I'm probably not going to support this tonight just because I think this is one that while affordable housing is definitely a need in our community, I think this is one that we could maybe put on the shelf until the summer and wait and see kind of how things develop down in Salem. That's just my personal opinion, and I'm not trying to sway anybody, but just that's why I'm not going to be supporting it. I think this could be a tool, but I also would like to see it more focused. So,
Anyone else? Elise?
Well, I'm just thinking out loud through my lack of knowledge, I guess, here is that, so if it was, because originally I had the thought that you brought forward, Elizabeth, and what Robert brought forward, but if we were to do that and it was a quasi judicial hearing, we would have to do that for every single property, or it would be for a specific, you would have a specific area that you would do that you were rezoning?
In theory, you might define an area, but it would still be quasi-judicial within that area. You still have notification requirements to do. When you go through comp plan and zone change, there's transportation planning rule requirements that you have to look at. There are a number of different ways, and again, specifically, we didn't say exactly. It was just what staff is bringing forward is a direction that past council established as a work priority for staff, and we were bringing it back forward to initiate and start that process.
Follow on?
Yeah, follow on. So to me, this is just the initial studying of the information to come back with a proposal. It's not a proposal of really anything. It's just the studying of the information, correct?
All you're doing is initiating a process. And as we sit down and we have conversations with Planning Commission, they may say, well, we think you might want to look at it this way rather than this way. But right now, we don't have the authority to even go talk to them about it because it requires council to initiate that process.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this since the packet came out, and I'm just having a hard time really understanding the logic behind having an R1 zone that would have duplexes and triplexes in it. I feel, I guess I'm just having trouble thinking about how this wouldn't just give a developer the ability to buy up historic homes and, change it into duplexes or triplexes. At the same time, I really do think that we need to do infill and combat unaffordable housing. But I think at this time, I'm not sure that this is necessarily a priority for moving forward in my eyes. So that's probably why I'm not going to be supporting this.
Stephanie?
So I know that it says on here no fiscal impact, but we're not looking at the time devoted to doing this. Is that correct? So the man hours that would be put to doing this study isn't reflected in that. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's in our work program this fiscal year to start to do this. So we have the staff allocation, as I mentioned earlier, once we kind of weaned our way through all the current planning process. A fiscal impact later, as we come back with a proposal, whatever that proposal may be, then we will provide a fiscal impact.
And just to follow up is, I don't see a pressing need for this at this point. In terms of, it's not like we have developers sitting in front of us wanting to, I guess, do this. So I'm not sure I'm in support of this either at this point, because I do have the same concerns that have been brought up.
Elise?
I guess I just feel like we're continuing to tie the hands of city staff from the previous priorities that were set. And it just feels like every time Doug comes forward to us, we keep delaying. And so what is he supposed to be working on? And when are we going to move forward? And I do feel like affordable housing is, for me, my number one priority with the homeless population and us not serving them adequately. And so if I'm going to push anything, it's going to be moving forward, at least with the studying of information and having of conversations around this process, because that was the direction that was given for the last 3 years.
Elizabeth?
I think I do want to support affordable housing. I think part of the reason that I'm having trouble is because we as a council haven't yet set our priorities. And so it's hard for me to say that we should direct work when we haven't specifically decided what we're going to move forward. Affordable housing is absolutely something that I want to support. I just don't know if this part of that is something that I'm for at this point.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
can I suggest that one meeting from now, you're going to have a conversational discussion about the housing priorities. We're going into that assuming of moving with the same priorities that we had and then with a later goal-setting session. But part of this, I think, is that if you haven't been on the Affordable Housing Committee, or really there was a reason like you didn't listen to the stuff before because you weren't concentrating on housing, that there may be a value, and it's one of them that will be presented to you. And the way it was going to even present the priorities to you, eliminate 2 of them that we've already done, but take those 10 and get to the ones that are the most, like, you need information and you can ask questions that. So if it seems like you might not be prepared to do it tonight, one idea might be is to table it to a time certain, which could be next meeting. And then after you hear the priorities and some say, yeah, I agree with those going forward, or no, here's like the 4 that were given to them, that were presented. Here's the 4 that you're going to be asked to say on a work plan for the next year to go forward with. You say, okay, I've had a chance to think about this or read some of the last one, or you can ask as much as you question, because then it's that's why we're asking you if you'd come in at 5 or 5:30 to have maybe a 45-minute discussion just on this topic.
And just to clarify some of my comments, the rest of these proposals in the packet tonight, I'm fully prepared to move forward with. This one in particular, to me, because of what's going on down in Salem, I kind of want to see what they come up with, and then if we can augment that, that's great. And plus, I'd rather see us do like we've done on our priorities with TVF&R and some of the other affordable housing issues that we've had the council look at. Let's hit them, get them done. And what I'd like to see is the other ones implemented and really focus on. I feel like since I've been on council, we come up with 13 goals, and then here you go, here's 13, let's do them all. In this case, and I think moving forward in this term for me, it's going to be less about let's do 27 things all kind of, really shallow. Let's dig into these 5 things and get them done comprehensively and well. And that's what I'd like to see us do on the other resolutions that are in the packet tonight. That's why this one, I'm willing to sit on it until June, July, when we know what the legislature is going to do. And then hey, maybe this is something we need to bring up again. Maybe it's a zone change. Maybe it's a circling an area of town that could support these types of housing solutions. Maybe it's a community-wide solution like this is written. So that was kind of, the more I think about it, kind of how I'm handling this particular resolution. So
I'll just, one comment, and first off, full disclosure, my day job, I work for Habitat for Humanity. And secondly, I'm a member of the group called Housing Newberg, which is the private group, not the city group. So just so that it's clear, I mean, this proposal came out of Housing Newberg, which is a group of now more than 40 people that are concerned about the issue of housing in our community. So they're major employers, the faith community, builders, developers, city staff, et cetera. So up to 40 people. And this was a suggestion that came out actually because this is something that's been in place in McMinnville for 30, 40 years, where you can build, particularly on corner lots in the R1, you can build duplexes. You remember, you're also bound by the lot size that you're presented with. So currently at 5,000 square feet, building a duplex or a triplex, you're still going to have the parking requirements, setback requirements, and all of this, so lot coverage. So it's not. I think it's just trying to give, the original thought of this was to try to give more flexibility to builders to potentially put in more units in a defined area. Now, we just happen to be ahead of the curve in the people in Salem, I guess, that we came out with this before they did. But I don't know that that's necessarily a reason not to move forward to open this discussion anyway. It was one of the approved, so we came to the City Council, Housing Newberg did with 9 proposals. 4 of them were moved forward at that time. 2 have now been accomplished with 2 more to go. This is one of those. So I think that's sort of more of the historical background on it. The other thing that I will say is that anybody who's been around to see a zone change, particularly an upzoning, that it gets very challenging to say to neighbors, we're going to put in more people in your neighborhood. We only have to look far as Diskin's Commons to see what happened with that. Now, again, that was not just higher density, that was also a certain degree of NIMBYism, if I can say that. Sorry, but I think that's probably true. So I think that that's something that we will face as we try to. And I know at the meeting just recently with Housing Newberg, I mean, a suggestion was brought up, well, why don't we just reduce minimum lot sizes for all zones? So I mean, I think people are thinking about it, and that's where the genesis, I guess, of this particular one came from. But if again, if we're comfortable to table, I don't know if that jams up the work for the staff more or not. So, Doug, a thought on that, or does that not enter into the equation?
Well, I think I'd take one step back, Mayor, and that is, back in September, we brought forward, based upon a land use action, we came back to council and looking at what the work program would be on affordable housing. So we had already done the Housing Newberg work back in December of 2017. Questions came up about manufactured homes and regulations to try to preserve and protect those. The council directed me to go back and talk with the Affordable Housing Commission. They directed me to go talk with Housing Newberg, get their input and feedback, and then come back to the council with that information. So I now have done that. I've been to the Affordable Housing Commission twice. We've been to Housing Newberg. And the short of the story is everybody's still on the same page of do the construction excise tax evaluation and do the missing middle duplex triplex. So that report I have to bring back to you at your first meeting in March to say this is what the group said, but now you've got the preview of what they've said. So getting to your question about what does it do to the work program, well, we always have lots of work to do. There's nothing lacking there. But it's also my job is to try to weave together all of these different activities that we've got going on. So we're working on this riverfront plan. We're working on the housing needs analysis. We're working on the urban growth boundary expansion. We're trying to do things in the downtown. We're doing the community visioning, which has a housing component to it as well, and trying to weave all this fabric together so that it knits together and links together and it doesn't have individual silos operating out here. So can I reapportion staff time to work on some other things? In part, yes, but in part, I'm following the direction that a council gave me. And this is what we put into the work program for this fiscal year. It wasn't until it came up, the last month or so about the legislature and an idea about just allow any housing in any zone, get away with zoning. There's kind of one theoretical proposition to that, and let it go. And so at least we wanted to start looking at the issue. But ultimately, we will follow what council wants us to do.
The first hearing of Codex Bill is HB 2001, and the first hearing of that is on the 11th. And it's scheduled for basically the Human Services one, and then it would move from there to Ways and Means.
Yeah, and I think you could safely say that there will be housing bills that will go through this session. I think you can safely say that. So what they all may be, I no idea, but there's a bunch of them. So, all right, pleasure of the council. Anyone? You've got before you, pass it, don't pass it, table it. Hearing nothing, I will do that. I will make a motion that we pass Resolution 2019-3523 to initiate a resolution for the amendment to the Newberg Comprehensive Plan and Municipal Code to allow duplexes and triplexes in the R1 zone. Do I hear a second? We've got a second from Elise. Further discussion? Hearing none. Stephanie.
So I am very conflicted about it, but I do see the value in getting the information. If we're not locked in, I mean, if what I'm hearing is we're not completely locked into this, that we get enough information to say, I mean, we need housing in this community, and we need affordable housing, and I think we need to balance density and sprawl, and this is one way to do that, and I appreciate that, and I really want our community to look more to that balance, and so I guess I am less skeptical if what we're going to get is a lot more information, because I think information helps. So
Liz.
Yeah, I was just gonna tag right along that I think it is really important to kind of combat sprawl, and density is going to be more important for that. And these are the types of changes that we're going to have to make in this community if we're going to grow well and grow affordably. So I think that, I think I'm ready to approve this.
All I was going to say was to try to articulate better what I was trying to say earlier, which is just, I'm not proposing that I'm going to vote in favor of this once the information comes back, but I feel like it's completely irresponsible to ask a group of 40 people that are experts in the field to spend a ton of time to put together a proposal and then not allow us to get the information that they're proposing. So I don't want to keep having these committees of people that are spending all this extra time of theirs if we're not even going to allow for information to come back.
I would say that the reason that I'm not supporting this is not because I don't want to hear the information, it's because I want us to have all the information before we start down a path that could change daily once these hearings start on the 11th. So that's why I'm not going to be supporting this. Not because I don't appreciate the committee and what work they've done, it's just the situation has changed, and I want to see the full picture before we start doing work that could change or be thrown out day to day as the session goes on. That's why I'm not going to support this.
You know, in terms of compromise, if it's not going to jam up city staff too terribly badly, I could happily wait until the 11th if we heard something. Again, there's no promise it's going to pass on the 11th or how long it may take. But if if we have to pause for a while, I'm fine with that too. So
you need to vote on the motion.
we do. So as it stands, now that discussion is closed, all in favor of the motion, which to remind you is to approve Resolution 2019-3523, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Next, Resolution 2019-3529, initiate Development Code Amendment, Vertical Housing Regulations. Thank you, Keisha.
Good evening. So I'm here to present this resolution 2019-3529 for vertical housing. And where this came out of was the Newberg Downtown Improvement Plan. This was one of the action items within that plan. And there's other cities within this area. Beaverton has one of these programs, Oregon City, as well as Milwaukee, and there's other ones as well. And how this works is it's a tax abatement and allows up to 80% partial tax abatement of improvements over a 10-year period. And it could be for new mixed-use developments or redevelopments of existing buildings. It doesn't cover land. However, if there's an affordable housing component to that, then that land, there could be some benefits to the land in partial tax exemptions. And how we would accomplish this is through an overlay district. So Beaverton, I think, has like 4 of these districts. So you could look at different areas around the city and say, okay, this is an appropriate area for it. And we have other overlay districts like Stream Corridor and things like that within our development code. And the way the tax abatement works, for the one equalized floor of residential, you'd have 20%. And then the first floor is going to be, it's a mixed-use building, so you'll just have, commercial on the first floor. And for 2 equalized floors, you'd be looking at 40% tax abatement, 3 equalized floors, 60%, and 4 equalized floors, 80%. Applicable council priorities, you have Goal 8, encourage affordable housing. Goal 11, implement Newberg economic development strategies, and there's 2 strategies that are specifically applicable here. Strategy 2.1, revitalization of downtown Newberg, and then 2.3, redevelop vacant and underutilized commercial retail or commercial and retail sites. So our recommendation is to adopt resolution number 2019-3529, initiating and amending the Newberg Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to provide vertical housing program. And again, this is just to begin the work. There's nothing that's going to immediately take place. We'll take it before the Planning Commission, do some work sessions, get something that is the corners kind of rounded off, so then the council will also have the opportunity to take a look at this and make changes as they would see fit. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions? Anyone? No? All right. Thanks so much. All right. All right. Discussion, anybody? Discussion?
So, I'll go ahead and start.
Patrick,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
go
I feel
for
like I'm
it.
talking a lot tonight. I know of projects in the local area that people have looked at property and wanted to build something like this, and the numbers didn't pencil out, and so it didn't happen. And I've seen other communities face that problem too. And when I look at something like this, this is a way that would help the long-term financial viability of projects like that could bring more people to downtown, to bring more vibrance to our cultural district, bring more vibrance to our downtown businesses, bring more traffic to everything that's happening downtown or wherever else we were to put these districts. So I'm going to be in support of this, and I'm really excited about it. I especially like the fact that it looks at housing for low-income persons, and the fact that it is also temporary. It's not a permanent tax abatement, but there's a sunset on it as well. So, if we can get more projects like this, I think that would be a benefit to our community, especially when we're looking at the workforce issues that we're facing, and the stories I've heard about people driving from God knows where to work at the Allison or work at other areas in our community. So that's why I'll be supporting this tonight. Yeah, okay. I would move that we pass resolution 2019-3529, a resolution initiating an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to initiate a vertical housing program.
Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the resolution 2019-3529 passes. Next, resolution 2019-3530, initiate development code amendment residential parking regulations downtown.
Okay, and again, I don't think I introduced myself. My name's Keith Leonard. I'm an associate planner here with the city of Newberg. Okay, so once again, this is an item that was in the Newberg Downtown Improvement Plan, an action item, specifically on page 29. There's a statement where we're trying to encourage an increase of residential use along East 2nd Street, and this is where this would be located. Also on page 29, it recommends a fee in lieu program. Now, the way these fee in lieu program work, where you have a developer that would, I mean, currently too, I should back up. During peak periods of the day, about 47% of the parking is actually being utilized in the downtown. So there is enough parking. So with these fee in lieu programs, the city would be allowed to collect a fee in place of a development providing on-site parking, and then these fees can be used for such activities as buying property or even developing additional parking. And talked about the 47%. And then another good thing about having additional residential uses within the downtown. The people that live in these areas actually will go downtown. They'll shop at the stores. They'll go to the restaurants. So it really helps the downtown businesses as well. So the code section that would need to be modified is section 15.305020, and there's a footnote number 8. And this requires one parking space for each residential unit within the downtown area. And with our conversations with people that are looking at developments within downtown, parking is always coming up as an issue. Applicable council priorities, you have goal 8, encourage affordable housing. Goal 11, implement Newberg economic development strategies. And there's one strategy that's applicable here and 3 action items. So strategy 2.1, revitalization of downtown Newberg is applicable here. Action 6, implement recommendation in the Newberg Downtown Improvements Plan. And Action 9, ongoing implementation of the Newberg Downtown Improvement Plan. And then Action 11 is increase downtown housing. So once again, we're recommending that the council adopt Resolution 2019-3530, which would initiate an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to encourage additional residential development in the downtown in order to further support downtown businesses by modifying the parking requirements for residential development within the C3 zoning district. And that's a good point. It's going to be the C3 zoning district, which is our downtown area.
Questions of Keith? Patrick, I'm sorry.
No, go
Elizabeth,
ahead.
Elizabeth, you're up.
Okay. Can you just let me know, and I'm sorry that I don't know this, but is George Fox in the C3 zoning district?
Doug is probably better in that. The whole university isn't, but there may be some portions, so.
The C3, there may be a couple of lots for George Fox down around the Hancock, River Street, the Friends Yearly Church building. That's where the dividing line comes from. C2 goes out Portland Road, then you come into C3. So if there's a concern about, would this apply to George Fox University? Maybe only a couple of parcels of land that already have existing structures on them. This is really, think of it in the C3 area is kind of mid-block between Hancock and Sheridan, mid-block between 2nd and 3rd River Street to the east end of the couplet.
Follow on? So my fear would be that as George Fox continues to buy up property that seeps into this kind of C3 zone, I would feel much more comfortable, and I know this is just the beginning, but just stating it now, that if we did some sort of maybe exemption or said like this doesn't apply to the university, because I think could be a big issue going forward. So that's where I'm at.
Patrick.
Hi. In my previous life, I was a newspaper reporter, and I covered a number of communities, I can list them if you'd like, where parking was like the bomb sitting over in the corner, and you said downtown parking, and everybody lost their minds. Now, I have not experienced that here in Newberg, and so I was curious if staff had any historical comments about this. I, in theory, am in favor of this. What I don't want to have happen is go, hey, this looks fun, and start shaking it and have it explode. So, do we have any historical data about downtown parking, and if it's a controversial subject, or is it one that the Downtown Coalition and everybody involved kind of plays well together?
I can say any community you go to has an issue about parking. And all of the things we're bringing forward to you are hard. The easy stuff was done decades ago. The hard stuff is in front of you, and future councils are going to have more hard things to deal with. But what we know is from the work we did in the downtown plan, we hired a consultant. There was a sub-consultant, Rick Williams Consulting. They went out and did an inventory of every on-street and off-street parking space in the downtown, and then they did a utilization study. And as Keith had indicated, that in the peak 2-hour period during the week between 11 and 1 p.m., we do not use 50% of the parking that is available downtown. What we have, and I've said this to others, we have a perception problem. Perception problem that is, if I can't pull up in the street and open my car door and take 5 steps and walk through the door of the building, then there's a parking problem. Yes, we have some hot spots in the downtown area. You can say from Howard to College. You can say around the post office. We've mapped that. We've got some heat maps that are in that study. What we're looking at here is how do we address the issue if we're trying to capture an additional 200 to 400 residential units in the downtown area, and people are talking to us about opportunities to build, and when we bring up, you have to have 1 parking space for every residential unit that you develop. Well, then you look at the lot sizes for doing these infill developments. We know we're not talking about having a parcel that's several acres in size. We're often talking about parcels that may be a few thousand square feet. It may be 10,000 square feet in size. And if you're trying to get housing, it's really saying, we don't want the house. Well, one could say, we don't want the housing downtown. We'd rather have commercial on the ground floor and then put offices above. Or put vacation rentals above, because vacation rentals don't have to provide any parking. If you're a commercial business downtown, you are not required to provide any parking. So the theory was, when we were putting together the downtown plan, working with the consultants, is could you have a different system where it provides options for the developer? One option may be you can provide your parking if you want to. An option could be that you provide a percentage of your parking on site and you pay an in lieu of fee on the cost of what it would take for buy land, design, build parking. The third is you don't provide any parking, and so these are the bookends now, and say you pay a fee for all of your parking, and then we look at where is strategically the best places to have parking where we're seeing development occur. Could we buy up potentially an underutilized vacant lot and put in some surface parking? Could we potentially build a parking garage someday on 2nd Street? We already own the property there. How do we strategically do that? And so as we go through this process, we're going to be looking at all of that. Will there be people who will say, oh my goodness gracious, parking has now become a huge issue? Yes, there will be people who say that. But until we look at all of the data and come up with different ways and analyze it, talk with the Planning Commission again. We'll be talking with the Downtown Coalition. We're going to have to talk with businesses and property owners downtown, and then have information to be able to come back to the Planning Commission and say, okay, here's ideas, here's options. What do you think? And eventually they would make a recommendation to the council, and you'll hold a public hearing and you'll make some recommendations. Doesn't say you have to approve anything. Just comes before you, you consider it, you can give it thumbs up, thumbs down, or make modifications.
Follow on. And what I'm trying to determine, Doug, is if this is going to be a firecracker or something lethal. So what I'm trying to determine is, I want to be prepared going into these conversations to where if this is going to be a tough political fight or something that's going to be super controversial, I know that going in, and I know, okay, I need to do some upfront work, a lot of upfront work. Now, if we're just passing vertical height standards that everybody agrees with, I don't have to do a lot of upfront work. If this is gonna be something that's gonna be, of the three, this is gonna be the hot potato, I wanna know that so I can go out and start having conversations. And that's all I'm trying to determine.
I don't know yet.
Okay, and that's
It's a
perfect.
great question,
Yeah.
but we haven't gone out and talked with anybody.
Okay.
Yes, there was conversations when we were putting the plan together, and it wasn't, nobody was saying absolutely no, nobody was saying absolutely yes, we just got to look at it. This, again, is for council to say, staff, go start this. You know, I've given Keith, I said, you know, this is a project maybe we'll have done by the end of the calendar year. So this is not an immediate rush. There's a lot of work and activity that has to, a lot of education that has to occur to see if this is going to be workable or not.
And one last one, and this is just an overall comment. I really want to commend staff for coming forward with these three, the vertical height, the parking, and then the last one, which I just forgot. Yeah, the commercial space, because it is an excellent way to vitalize downtown without spending a ton of money on our side. And without the other tools that we could have in our toolbox, like enterprise zones or urban renewal districts or building, you know, cool projects out there and spending millions of dollars, here's a way we can help kind of facilitate some vitality down there without spending a whole ton of money. So I really want to commend you guys for taking on two issues. One, vitalizing downtown, and two, affordable housing. I think that that is exactly the type of stuff and type of solutions that we should be looking into. So thank you.
Any other questions for staff? We do have public comment. We have proponent Robert Suppy. Mr. Suppy, it's the button on the right. Please state your name.
Someday I'll learn, you know. Good evening. My name's Robert Suppy, and again, thank you all for the opportunity. I listen myself as a proponent of this, which I am, but I have concerns when I read the statistics about how many available parking spaces there are in downtown Newberg. The first time I heard these statistics a number of years ago, I had concerns about whether or not they really represent the parking conditions. Without better detail, I don't think they do. I'm a very big fan of the council using accurate and relevant data to guide decisions. I'm not questioning whether or not the study done that is cited is accurate. I can't read my writing. No, it's somebody who doesn't know how to write well. I'm arguing that it is not precise enough to be relevant. The council should ask for better information. For example, if I'm reading the NDIP correctly, which is what's referenced here, only about 11% of the off-street parking stalls are public. When the sample was taken in the report, virtually all of those stalls were in use. Unless private businesses consent to public use of their lots, the vast majority of off-street stalls have very limited availability. The fact that Knapp's, for example, has open parking stalls doesn't do me any good if I want to shop at some other business in that neighborhood. I think it is also critical to identify where the vacant stalls are at different times. As another example, if the 2nd Street lot has vacancies, but I want to shop at the west end of downtown, those spaces are not very useful to me. I recognize that there will be ample opportunity to investigate these details if council chooses to move forward with this. My recommendation is that if you choose to do so, request that staff provide you better details of the actual parking situation in downtown. What you have is not adequate to provide an informed decision. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Suppy? Hearing none, thank you. Okay, further discussion, folks, or do we hear a motion, or both? Patrick.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 2019-35, oh crap.
3530.
Yeah, 3530, sorry, I opened the next one. A resolution initiating an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code Title 15 Development Code to consider modifying the residential parking requirements for C3 zoned property.
And Elise with a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, Resolution 2019-3530 passes. Moving on to Resolution 2019-3531, Development Code Amendment, Commercial Space Requirements for Residential Downtown.
Thank you. This last one for me. So once again, this is coming out of the Newberg Downtown Improvement Plan. Page 29, there's an effort to increase residential use along 2nd Street. This currently requires 30% of the first floor to be commercial, and in some areas that might not be appropriate. First Street is your kind of your main business area along with Hancock. There might be appropriate areas where, commercial would work out. And the other thing this doesn't do, it doesn't tie the hands of a developer from proposing commercial. This is merely providing additional options. So the code section that we'd have to look at is section 15.305.020. Once again, one of these footnotes. This footnote, number 5, only allows, as I said, 30% of the first floor of a building to be residential. So the bulk of it would have to be commercial. And if you think about 2nd Street, there's some areas where, it would be tough to see that all happen unless the lots were all consolidated. Applicable council priorities: Goal 8, encourage affordable housing. Goal 11, implement the Newberg Economic Development Strategy, and there is a strategy there, 2.1. And actions 6, 9, and 11. 6 is the implementation of downtown, the Downtown Improvement Plan. Ongoing implementation of the Newberg Downtown Improvement Plan is action 9, and 11 is increased downtown housing. So our recommendation here is to adopt Resolution 2019-3531, initiating an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to remove commercial use requirements in the first floor of buildings along East 2nd Street. And that concludes.
Thank you, Keith. Questions for Keith? Anyone? All right, thank you. All right. Do I hear a motion or further discussion?
I have further discussion.
You have further discussion, Elizabeth. All right.
So I think this is a great thing if we're encouraging affordable housing. However, I think that it would be better if we said that we should remove the requirement for first floor commercial use along East 2nd Street as long as there was some requirement for affordable housing to be within the unit. My fear being if we're really trying to encourage affordable housing, that's great, but I don't necessarily trust somebody to just build affordable housing because we changed the code this way, hoping that it would encourage it. So I would actually, yes, that's my proposal.
The clarification, is it specifically for affordable, or are we trying to get housing downtown, period?
Housing
Of all
downtown,
types?
period.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, further discussion or comments? Patrick?
And so what I would say is that those comments are on the record, and obviously, when staff takes this to the planning commission, they'll hear that, or you will share that with them. So I don't see a need to change this tonight, but just, thank you for putting it on the
With that, do we have a motion?
Sure, why not?
Come on, go for it.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass resolution number 2019-3531, a resolution initiating an amendment to the Newberg Municipal Code, Title 15 Development Code, to remove the requirements for first floor commercial use along East 2nd.
Have a second?
Second.
Stephanie on the second. Further discussion? Question's been called for. All in favor of Resolution 2019-3531 signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, resolution passes 5-0. All right. Last but not least, on new business tonight, we've got Mr. BioWare. Community visioning. Here we go.
BioWare, community visioning coordinator for the city. It's really just information that I would like to share with you all. So if you have any questions on the RCA, I'd be happy to answer them. And also give you an update as to where we are in between the time that I wrote that and now.
How's about we start with an update? Give us an update, and then we'll go for questions after that, maybe.
Yeah. So we have. So in the packet there is there are 2 community profiles, 2 different types of the same community profile: communications plan and the stakeholder matrix. The stakeholder matrix entails 39 interviews or group session participants. We shot for 50, didn't get there. And I also mentioned that we had, I think, 2 meetings, 2 advisory committee meetings. We've had another one since then, and we've also had a planning team meeting, as well as a community core volunteer orientation meeting as well.
And then, looking at my count, that's tomorrow night.
It is.
It is
Yep.
tomorrow night. Okay.
Tomorrow.
All right. So that is the sort of the kickoff. Is that right? Is that my understanding?
Right. It's a kickoff event. It's designed to get more volunteers, as well as give the community a chance to see what we've done so far. So in that, one more update. So we've refined the topics that we'll be discussing during for the vision. They are. It's in part refinement and part rebranding. So it is community engagement, community leadership, economic development, livability and development, community identity, and cultural assets. And I can give you more of an explanation as to what all of those entail if you'd like, but that's what they are.
Right. Questions, folks? Hearing none. Wow. Good luck with the event tomorrow, right? I hope you get good turnout and everybody shows up.
Well, there's one way to ensure that people will show up.
Show up?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll see you all there.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. Anything else? I'd like to say thank you, right, for doing this for us. I think it's very important, and I'm just glad you're doing the work for us. So thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. All righty. I've got on here council business. Do we have other council business? Yes, Sue.
So Dawn Karen asked me to mention she's going to be putting a recruitment notice out soon. We generally do recruitments twice a year for city committees, but we do have a vacancy on citizens rate review. And so people can go to the city website and go to the council webpage, and there's a volunteer button, or they can contact myself or Dawn Karen to fill out an application. So.
Yeah, thank you. Do help out. I've asked a couple of people and have gotten nowhere on that. So if you can find somebody, let me know. Truman. I can tell you from experience, it's awesome. Truman.
Mr. Mayor, Truman Stone, City Attorney, just as a matter of process, when you were having the discussion about council members serving on various committees, some of those committees are more formal committees, some are less formal or whatever, but I would recommend that you make a motion for those assignments that you discussed earlier tonight, and then have the council approve them. And I think you could do that as a full slate, not individual votes.
So, and if I can recall what I've got, Sue, you can help, I think. Sure. All right. So I would like to move that we name Councilor Finley to the Visioning Committee, Cultural District, right? Elizabeth to the Yamhill County Water Task Force, Elise to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Commission, and Elizabeth to Newberg 2030. Did I get them all? Okay. Can I get a second? Second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. And just one comment. Thank you. So that does pass. Thank you. This greatly helps my schedule, and it's all about me, so that's important. So anyway, but thank you. Thanks very much for that. Anything else? Anybody? No? All right, we're out of here. Then 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, correct? On the 19th? Okay, and the 19th is a Tuesday, so keep that in mind. And I think that's it. And Elisa's,
We'll try to hold everything else as much off the agenda as we can.
yeah. Well, it sounds to me like we've already got stuff on that agenda, though, I think. 4 items? Okay. All right, cool.
I have to get on a plane at like 4 o'clock the next morning.
Oh, wow. So we'll, oh, yeah, no, we'll keep a tight schedule. Same day, that's, that Tuesday, the 19th.
We tried and it didn't.
Yeah, we couldn't find another time. I'm sorry. And at least you got the music, right, for next time? Okay. All right. Other than that, thank you all, and have a good night.